Hi guys, it's marianakebaso. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking all about
Sex and the City.
So I recently finished watching this show, not really at the request of a friend. I'd always wanted to watch the whole show and see what everybody was raving about, and I have some thoughts. So I thought I'd share them with you, bring back like my unpopular opinions series that I used to do. So to start, for those of you who don't know what Sex and the City is, if you don't know what Sex and the City is, you probably shouldn't watch this video because I'm going to talk about plot points in the show. So if you haven't watched it and you don't want it spoiled for you, then you should go finish watching it. But it is a show that aired in the late 90s about 4 women in New York City living their lives and openly talking about their sex lives and their relationships. Now, would I say that this is a super sex focused show? No. I watched it all the way through and I can confidently say that it's not like super sex focused. Is sex like part of the conversations and something that they talk about quite a lot? Yes, but I actually don't think that sex was talked about as much as you would think based off of the title. It's more about like relationships and living in the city and navigating life as a single woman in New York, right? First, let's start with some positive things about it because I don't want to be too harsh in the beginning, you know? Like the show for its time in the late 90s when it came out was very revolutionary. Like to have, first of all, the main characters of a show be single, unmarried, childless women, that is like revolutionary in itself for the time period. And not only for them to be single, unmarried, childless women living in New York, but most of them were very open in the fact that like they didn't want to get married and they didn't want to have kids necessarily. And those were like plot points throughout the show about that. That I think was very like, I've already said revolutionary like 4 times, but yes, the show was very revolutionary for its time. That and the fashion. The fashion of the show was pretty good. I loved some of the outfits in Sex and the City as one would. One thing I don't understand though is like how the girls were always like flitting around in heels because I cannot wear heels for like more than 4 hours at a time. But these girls were like strutting across New York City in stilettos, okay, which to me, that's crazy. I just couldn't be me. Obviously the show is set in New York, which I think is a positive or something that I liked about it. I like that the show is set in New York and I like the, you know, New York attitudes and stuff because it's always fun and interesting to watch a show set in New York like that. I will say, just like many other shows, the first few seasons are like the best. Now, does it get like really bad towards the end? No, but I definitely feel like the characters just changed way too much in the end that wasn't true to the original characters. Let's get into like what I didn't like about Sex and the City. That I think that all the characters in the show, Carrie, Samantha, Charlotte, Miranda, all of them needed serious, intense therapy, okay? And there was a couple of episodes about therapy. Carrie goes to therapy for a couple episodes, but then she ends up banging a guy that she's seeing the same therapist as her. That in itself was insane to me. But moving along, like there's so many insane things, like we don't even have time to dissect all of them. Then there was in the Sex and the City first movie or the second movie, we have Carrie and Miranda who are in marriage counseling. So let's start with Carrie. Carrie needed therapy because Carrie had just serious problems with the fact that she would jump into relationships with men who were not good for her. Most of the men, with the exception of like 2, 3 of the men that she was in a relationship with, were good for her. The rest of them, trash, garbage. Obviously Big is like a huge person in Carrie's life, and I strongly believe that Carrie like needed intense therapy just from the first round her relationship with Big. Like after the first breakup, like Carrie needed therapy to process the relationship and move on, because I think that why Carrie was so willing to go back and back again with Big is because she never truly got over him. Like sure, it's one thing like to break up with a person because you weren't amicable, but the trauma that Big put Carrie through time and time again was just so immense that there was no way that she was going to move on from it by like, you know, sleeping and eating and trying to forget about him. Like it was not gonna happen, and then he kept on coming back, reminding her of him, and then they would get back together. Whole thing. Carrie needed therapy. Samantha, I wouldn't say that Samantha was probably one of the healthier characters in terms of mental state, just because she seemed to be very happy and very secure and very content in her her life and her lifestyle. She wasn't hurting anyone, she wasn't doing anything terribly wrong, I guess. And Samantha just seemed like a person who was, in general, mentally stable and sane, unlike some of the other characters in this show. Some of the characters in the show definitely acted insane a lot, but Samantha, not a lot. I don't think Samantha needed intense therapy, but I do think that Samantha could have needed therapy more in the first couple of seasons when she was sleeping around like a lot. Just because I feel like, yes, it's one thing to sleep around with guys and, you know, label it as sexual liberation and, you know, treating relationships like men, where men just sleep around and they don't really get into relationships. But I think it's a whole nother thing for your emotional side, which the show never really dived into. Like, the show always just showed like this very surface level Samantha, where she slept around with guys, she had, you know, hookups, and she was going out and having fun and blah blah blah. And at the surface, like based off of what the show showed me, she seemed very happy and mentally sane and stable, right? But in reality, like, we know, like therapists say, that people who are sleeping around, like, I don't want to say chronically because that makes it sound like really bad, like it's an illness, but usually people are very promiscuous because they're hiding from something, running from something, trying to avoid something. Something happened that caused them to act out in this way, not because it's how they want to act. But Samantha in general, like, it seemed like that was who she was. Like, it wasn't like she was being promiscuous, it was just Samantha, you know? Anyway, then we got Miranda. Miranda just had a very, I mean, Miranda's so slay, but she had just a very like negative outlook on life sometimes, like very pessimistic outlook on life, which I feel like a therapist could have helped her work through so that she was a little less pessimistic. Not to say that it's terribly a bad thing, because for the most part Miranda did seem pretty mentally stable and sane for the most part, except for the fact when Miranda like couldn't handle the idea of like someone loving her or receiving love in a way. Like, Miranda was very hyper independent in that way, which I think, again, a therapist could have helped her with. And then Charlotte was just like a whole thing. Charlotte, I feel like, could have gone to therapy for a variety of reasons, or should have gone to therapy for a variety of reasons. One, her obsession. Like, obsession is even a mild word. Charlotte, like, her only goal in life, or her only purpose in Sex and the City, was to find a husband and get kids. Which, cool, whatever. But like, that was like basically Charlotte's whole personality in the show. Just how to get married. You shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing this. Guys don't like this, guys don't like that. Don't break this rule, do this instead. Oh, like, that was like Charlotte's whole personality for like 3 or 4 seasons. If not more, actually. More, if that. Like, the only other plot we get with Charlotte is like with her art collecting, art restoring, art, I forget what something to do with art, her career, which was a plot point for a bit here and there, you know. And then that's about it. Like, we don't see hobbies, we don't see her interests outside of men and relationships. So that is something that Charlotte could have definitely unpacked. And then in later seasons and in the movie, we definitely see Charlotte having this, like, she couldn't have kids biologically, so that was something that I definitely think she should have gotten therapy for, because that is a very traumatizing experience in itself, like not being able to have kids even when you really want to have kids. And then also like the whole process of adopting. My first unpopular opinion, like major unpopular opinion, is that I genuinely believe that Carrie should have been the one to get cancer. So we know in season 5 or season 6 that Samantha gets diagnosed with breast cancer. Samantha decides to go and look into possibly getting a boob job, and then it turns out that she actually has a lump in her breast and it's cancer, and they remove it and she ends up being fine. But it was like a plot for a bit. But in like normal person terms, like, it just doesn't make sense that Samantha, the person who basically drank socially, got breast cancer, but Carrie, the person who smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes a day for the first 4 seasons, never like didn't get any sort of type of form of cancer. Like, it doesn't make sense medically speaking, but I guess it kind of does make sense because secondhand smoke is deadlier, and you know, Samantha hung out with Carrie all the time when she was smoking, so that's a whole nother thing. So maybe it was the secondhand smoke that got Samantha cancer, but I think that Carrie should have been the one to get cancer. Because another kind of unpopular opinion that I have is that like Carrie is kind of an insufferable main character. Like, I don't know if I'll be able to sit through a whole nother rewatch of the show just because Carrie is so annoying sometimes. Like, I don't think this is an unpopular opinion, but I'm gonna say it because she's just like, the decisions that she makes, the way she acts, the way she treats the people around her is just like, it's baffling to me. Like, it's not even like slay, it's just baffling. So yeah. yeah. Back to something that I kind of mentioned talking about earlier about how I thought that the show was more supposed to be about female friendship, but by the end of the show and by the end of all the movies, I have not watched the reunion, the remake, the continuation, I don't know what it's called, and just like that, yeah, I haven't watched that. But based off of like the first 6 seasons of the show and then the 2 movies, the show is apparently supposed to be about female friendship and 4 single women living and doing their thing in New York, right? But then by the end of season 6, everybody's in a committed relationship. Like, I thought, like, it's confusing me because, like, I was not expecting a show that's titled Sex and the City to end up with all the main characters in committed relationships. Some of them married, some of them trying to have kids, some of them having a kid. That was just very unexpected to me and something that I didn't enjoy because I expected more from the show in that sense. But then again, I guess I shouldn't expect that much from a show that started in the late 90s, you know? This is another thing that I didn't understand. So while the show was, like, you know, presented as being a show about female friendship, these female friends were lying all the time, okay? Like, Carrie would lie to Miranda, Miranda would lie to Samantha, Samantha would lie to Charlotte, or like, you could definitely tell at some points that Carrie and Miranda were like closer to each other than they were to the rest of the friend group. Carrie and Miranda were like this, while Samantha and Carrie and Miranda were like, you know, just a girl group. Where at times, like, I feel like, I mean, maybe it's just because I expect honesty in my friendships, so it was a little jarring to see like a friend group in which honesty was not like the forefront. Like, it wasn't like a big thing to them because they lied to each other, with each other, like all the time, just lies all the time. And that was something that was just, I didn't like it. I didn't like it, probably because it's a personal thing. Probably the lying was, you know, to create more drama and tension so that it would be an enjoyable show to watch, but that kind of made it less enjoyable for me. And then, this is not an unpopular opinion, but Miranda was the best character in the show up until the Sex in the City, the first movie. I do not like how she acted in the movie at all. We don't talk about the movie. The show ended at season 6, okay? The movies don't even exist in my mind, okay? What movies? What movies are we talking about? And then Charlotte was just so like crazy all the time. Insane, crazy, just madness. What other words can I use to describe Charlotte? She was just very obsessed again with the idea that like her only purpose in life was to have a husband and kids, and like she felt like a good husband was owed to her, which she should have unpacked in therapy. She didn't, but she was actually like so me sometimes, because Charlotte reminded me of myself when I get crushes, because I get very obsessive and very, yes, just obsessive and crazy in general. So Charlotte reminded me of myself in that, and that's something that I'm working on it, guys, like relax. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that for now. I do think though that Carrie was like one of the funniest people in the show. Samantha had like the best one-liners, Carrie had the best jokes, Miranda also had really good one-liners too, so I would say Miranda and Samantha were like tied for that. Charlotte was like funny in like an ironic way. Like, I felt like a lot of the times Charlotte, Miranda, and Samantha were like laughing at Charlotte, not with her. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. If you guys enjoyed, have fun, stay cute. I'll see y'all later.